Hi, John. How are you?
Good. I saw your movie. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Obviously, I mean, I knew I would since I also loved Everly.
Oh, that was you.
That was me. If you look on
were the
Rotten
one
Tomatoes, I'm the positive review.
You were the one
That was
guy.
me.
Well, thank you, John.
So, did you always have Steven Yeun in mind for this film? And was Walking Dead kind of his audition tape?
No and yes. No, was he the my first choice? I didn't have a first choice when I read the script because I wanted to keep it open as much as possible. Mainly because I didn't want to be, because in the script it was written for a Caucasian man, and I just was like, why don't we just cut out the caulk?
Yeah.
And just make it an Asian man. That was the worst joke of all time. No, I was a huge, and still am, I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead. And it was this very serendipitous moment where Steven was in that episode where he supposedly died.
Yeah.
And I was like pulling my hair out because when you get a film either greenlit or even before that, when you're like trying to sell the movie, you attach actors to it, and just based on what was written, not trying to think out of the script wasn't thinking out of the box in terms of the casting at the time. It was, but you look at the list and it's all 30-year-old white guys, and honestly, we've seen that movie a million times. You know, and I was like. And at the time, I was working a corporate job, and I saw how much equality was infused into the workplace now. I've been kind of poo-pooing corporate America, but there's some great things about it too. And in that case, that's the world that I live in has a very ethnically fluid environment, and I've fallen in love with Steven platonically since the first episode of The Walking Dead where he was the pizza boy. Now, I knew the comic, but I also knew Darabont, and knowing him, he was like, I'm going to shake shit up. So for the longest time, I kept thinking, Yeun's going to get it, Glenn's going to die, like 4th episode, 5th episode, he's going to go.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And he ended up spending, 5 seasons creating this character that developed from the pizza boy, comic relief in a way, to a full-fledged hero, a conflicted hero, a dark hero, a hero with a family. Like, how often do you get that on a TV show? And it just so happens that that actor is Asian. They didn't make a meal out of it at all. And I didn't either. So, and that was something from the beginning we said, we do not want to make this a message movie about equality. I think it's a more powerful message to not make a meal out of it and just say to the audience, this is your hero.
Yeah, just present it. This is real life. It's diverse.
If you have a problem with it, fuck you.
The problem's with you if you see a problem
exactly.
in this. Yeah.
But that's my America. Yeah. Steve Yeun is, like I said last night at the first screening, Steve Yeun is my Richard Dreyfuss. He's our everyman that you can put into extraordinary situations, like a dangerous virus or a zombie apocalypse or whatever. And he's going to ground those emotions. And I think that that's a really important thing that you have to do to engage your audience, or to invite your audience to go along for what is, for all intents and purposes, a pretty effed up ride. It's like if you had another actor in there, I think the movie might have come off as mean-spirited, But Steven just has such a charm and a life, that he can do the most horrible things in this show, and you still kind of love him.
You're always rooting for him.
And he even says it at the end. He goes, look, we killed a lot of people today. I live with that, And I felt that was kind of an important thing to say. And what's funny is that I from what I remember, that was kind of an off-the-cuff line that he had said, but he was speaking as Derek, and he wanted to make sure that this didn't come off as too nihilistic, But it's Steve Yeun, and he's our everyman, and we deserve more movies like that where it's not about the color of their skin or their sexuality or their sexual preferences. It's just about being human, and what does a human do in this somewhat inhuman situation.
Well, even though you didn't make a conscious decision of casting diverse actors, I think we can all just thank you for that. Same with Everly giving a female Latina kind of.
Yeah, I mean, like even with Wrong Turn 2, you know, the two people who live at the end of the movie are the dour, emo chick who usually dies in the first reel, and the black guy who dies either, you know, in the second or third reel, you know, and again, like, that's just how I grew up. Where I grew up with Ken Faree winning the day at the end of Dawn of the Dead, and going like, yeah, why not? You know, like that's the way. Like, there's no reason why we should even be having that discussion. Like when I was at Comic-Con a couple of years ago, and Sama and I were up there, and someone was like, you know, talking about, you know, females in action films, and I was like, why does it, like, we shouldn't, like, as much as it's nice to have applause with 7,000 people in Hall H, at the same time, I'm like, this should not even be an issue at this point.
At this point, it shouldn't be an issue.
But if there's anything like that this douchey white male can do to at least, you know, kind of level the playing field a little bit, great, you know. But again, it wasn't even, it was more instinctual than it was, what's the word, programmed. It was not, it wasn't a...
It just seemed natural.
It just seemed natural to me, and I mean, I was aware that, okay, like, I'm gonna have this amazing actor, but a particular actor in this role that is, you know, on a list of guys that are as, you know, as white as they come, and I'm like, I think we can change this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, your entire films are about kind of changing things up, introducing new situations, and it just so happens also introducing heroes we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Like Asian heroes, Latino heroes.
Even
just
like, as much as I disparage the movie because I don't like it, but people seem to like it. But with Knights of Badassdom, we never ever talk about how Peter Dinklage is a little person. You know, never comes up. In fact, the casting of his role in the script, he's a 6'3" Asian guy.
Wow.
That's why his name is Hung. It's not because Peter Dinklage is Hung, which he is. That's not confirmed.
Game of Thrones confirmed.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, the last person in the world you would ever think to play that part on paper is Peter Dinklage.
And that makes it even better.
But it's Peter fucking Dinklage. Yeah. And the fact that his friends don't make small jokes, and that, you know, the movie never goes like, the LARPing element never like uses that as like a, you know, a poke at all.
Yeah.
It's everyone is in this together, like, and LARPing itself is something about equality. It's about bringing everyone together to live out their fantasies. And you can be an orc, you can be a mage, you can be a sorcerer, you can be a fucking dragon. Like, you can be anybody you want. Like, that fosters that environment. So again, like, it's not something calculated, but it's something that I feel is important in cinema. And it, you know, again, if there's any small part that I can do to level the playing fields, then it's a total win.
Yeah, I think we all appreciate that very much.
My pleasure.
So obviously you've worked in an office, just judging by watching Mayhem.
Yeah.
You externalize everything we have to internalize working in there.
Got a lot of demons out.
Yeah, I know. I have a few coworkers when I used to work in an office. Yeah, Mary Pat, I'm talking about you. And yeah, you know, you just have these thoughts that you can't act on.
And when you have an environment like a corporate office with so many set rules and regulations and so many like things that on the surface seem like they are, you know, like character building seminars and, you know, like team effort shit and stuff like that, which is cool, you know, on a certain level. But then so many times we, like, there's one particular job that I had, anytime one of those came up, or like a cool luncheon, like pizzas start showing up, guess who's getting fired in the next day, you know? And that felt very calculated, and it kind of sucked.
Very manipulative.
Yes. And there was something about it that I just felt like I need to skewer the shit out of this. You know, like this to me feels like ripe material to be able to mess with. And yeah, I had just literally had to quit my corporate gig to make this movie, so it was fresh in my mind.
Yes.
It's totally fresh in my mind.
You put it completely into the film.
There's a lot of phrases in the movie like "let's discuss." Jesus, if I had a dime for every time I heard that and wanted to throw up, it's the worst. So, you know, it felt like the best way that I like to describe it is that I was doing research for Mayhem.
Yeah, perfect.
I was Cameron Crowe in Fast Times, where he would actually go to the high school to write that screenplay in that book. So that's how I justified it. I have corporate gig. What are you, crazy? I'm an artiste. I was just doing research.
So, obviously, because the Belko experiment is going to come out this week, there's going to be comparisons to it. Even though completely different stories, completely different themes.
Yeah, but what if anything, what's very telling about that is that there's a lot of stories about that environment and that culture that needs to be addressed. Like satire is a reflection of our times, and not saying that like I read Belko. I'm good friends with James, I'm friends with Greg, so like that unity is very exciting. My DP who shot this was going to shoot that because he shot Super, and it just didn't work out. So we were both aware of our movies, but I also knew that like Greg was going to take a particular tone, and I was going to take a particular tone, but this wasn't like a Deep Impact versus Armageddon sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's shitty timing, I won't lie. Like there's nothing that makes me like more irked than knowing that like in 4 days another Office thriller is coming out. But same time, anything that gets people to realize that like these are stories that need to be told in a way, that like, or there is a reason why these stories are kind of fresh in the minds of people, especially with the fact that our president is essentially the big boss from a corporate conglomerate. There's a lot of reflection that can be done with that, but at the same time, just on the surface level, just by taking the backdrop of corporate America and a job and why like the milieu that we could play with having the virus get unleashed in this situation. It just felt so right to do, and I think that there's going to be more of those types of movies too. So I think it's something that as long as I was entertaining, and as long as I had enough sugar to make the medicine go down, that because again you can reflect on this, and you can also see a very mean-spirited movie if another director or even another star or another cast read that script and went like, oh, okay, well, fuck corporations, but also made it very dark and very serious.
Very humanizing.
And I think that if you have actors like Steve Yeun and Samara Weaving and Steve Brand and Dallas Roberts, all these guys got that weird line between seriousness and comedy that I was trying to go for. Like, I wasn't trying to make 9 to 5, even though 9 to 5 is one of my favorite movies. But if you go back and watch 9 to 5, it's incredibly dark. There's that whole thing after they like tie up Dabney Coleman in S&M gear and leave him at his house, or when they're running around trying to shoot up the place, trying to get him. It's really dark, and I saw that as a kid going like, this feels like a horror movie, but it's so entertaining because you have Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton and Jane Fonda and and
all these iconic women.
The poison scene where you have like little Disney birds flying all over the place. You're like, what the hell, But if someone else had directed that movie and other actresses were in that movie and that tone was different, it would be a dark film, So, I haven't seen the finished Belko. And I'm dying to see it, of course. But I do know from that script that like it's funny. It's James, of course. It's going to be funny. But they took a very decidedly different approach to that view than we did, and thank God they did. Because I'd probably be a lot more pissed right now. Cool.
So any childhood influences that have kind of affected your style now as a director?
Well, it's a weird thing when you make your first movie. That's X amount of years of pent up style and visual
just back up
inspiration that you need to get out. That you want to be like, look at world here. Like I've watched a lot of Peter Jackson and Sam Raimi. But what's funny is that like I thought that by like say the third movie, I would not grow out of it, but that I would probably either evolve or. But there's just like cinema is a language, and the way that you're presenting a movie and you're telling a story and you're letting a story unfold. it's just like gesticulations. It's me using my hands and shit like that. Like that's just part of who I am. So there's a scene in the opening of the movie where there's just like seamless cuts and and body wipes and everything, and it's this momentum that I remember as a kid when I would watch Darkman or Evil Dead or whatever, that just kind of stuck with me, Now it's not more of a style, it's more of like a texture. Like there are character names of people that are friends of mine as kids. My favorite band of all time, since I was a kid, has a song in the movie, So it's not like deliberate things, whereas like with Wrong Turn 2, I can see all of my influences all over. I mean, it's a love letter to a very particular time in the 80s, the splatterpunk era. So there is definitely Stuart Gordon and Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson and Joe Zito and like all these directors who are making movies in that like hub. I see all that in there with a little bit of me,
Yeah.
But now the balances are shifting a little bit where, now I'm seeing more where I'm just going like, well, that's something I would do, not something that John Carpenter would do.
So just kind of evolving.
You have to evolve, like otherwise, you run the risk of something like happened to De Palma where, everyone couldn't stop connecting him to Hitchcock. It was inevitable, to a point, but he sometimes couldn't avoid that, I want to eventually have it where someone can watch a movie and not pick out the influences because there really might not be any influences. Yeah. It's just me.
They'll be like, oh yeah, they're gonna watch other films and be like, yeah, this is very Joe Lynch.
Sometimes that's not in a positive context. It's like, oh, this is so Joe Lynch right now. But hopefully, sometimes maybe the thumb will go up a little bit. We'll see.
All right. So when does the film come out?
It's out to buyers now. So who knows? This is the first time that I've ever had a movie like that because all the other movies I've had have had distribution. This is the first time that I'm doing like the true indie festival experience. So best thing I can say right now is coming soon.